This podcast is intended for mature audiences and discusses topics that could be triggering to some. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of this podcast. I am not a therapist or a doctor. All resources, books, and sources mentioned on the podcast can be found linked in the episode notes. Please note, names have been changed in this story for anonymity purposes. If you or someone you love is being abused, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. If you or someone you love is struggling with a suicidal crisis or emotional distress, you can contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline 24/7 at 1-800-273-8255. Please note, some of today's episode involves suicidal ideation or thoughts of suicide. Please take care when listening. Thank you. Thank you so much to all who submitted questions for the Q&A episode, and a huge thank you to Victoria and CJ for taking the time out of their busy schedules to answer said questions. I'm Tiffany Reese, and this is Something Was Wrong.
You think you know me, you don't know me well at all. Think you know me, you don't know me well.
I can't believe what this podcast has done. Everybody's like, is it out? Is it out? Is the next one out? Is it out? You know, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing. You know, it has reached so many people. CJ sent me the response from one of the folks thanking us, and that was very touching. Very, very touching. You know, I cried all the way through it.
Jamie wants to know, what feedback did Patty have for Victoria when she would say she was going to talk to Ted on Victoria's behalf? Did Ted give reasons as to why he thought Victoria needed counseling?
Patty was always very reassuring when she would talk to Ted. At least that's what the impression she gave me. And there were so many situations. I can't, say that there was one specific thing that sticks out or made it smooth things over if there was an argument or something to that effect. Ted was better after they had always chatted, but sometimes Ted also would say and be very angry about it. He's like, why are you telling her everything? Patty doesn't need to know everything. And Ted's reasonings, it was kind of funny, for counseling he kept saying, you need the help. You're the one that has the problem. You want to make our marriage better. You need to go get counseling. And he would always come up with an excuse every time I'd say, okay, I've mastered this or I've mastered that. So, let's work on our stuff together. And he always had an excuse for saying, for example, he would say, no, I don't think you've really got the clear point. You're still, lying. You're still not telling me things. And, I just don't understand why you're not getting any of this. And for me, that was very baffling because I was like doing everything that he gave me a list of things to do. And when I would conquer all of those things, there was always another list. Nothing was ever finished. He never ever said, okay, yeah, I can see that you're making improvements. And no, there was always more and more things that I was doing wrong.
Our next question is from Liz. She asks, has your brother or sister-in-law had any further contact with the O'Briens?
As far as I'm aware, my brother and his wife had no contact with the O'Briens for some time, way before Ted took his life. I'm talking like a few years. What I understand is my sister-in-law got very upset and said that, Ted, you need to move away from her. She's bad. And they disconnected.
Shay wants to know, why didn't your daughter participate in the podcast?
She's just not ready. She is handling Ted's death very difficult, and she felt that it's too soon.
Allison asked, what has been the most surprising part found in the healing from the death of Ted, mixed with finding out about what was actually going on? I know healing looks different for each person.
I think for us, finding out how strong a family unit we are. I see strengths I thought I never would see in myself, my children, my son and daughter-in-law. We have become such a complete family unit again, to where we were so dysfunctional before Ted's passing. When you find out someone you love has led a double life, and the hurt from that, and the ones that he loved and cherished, that it's a surprise to most people. How Ted treated his son was probably the most difficult for me to handle. We all have good moments and bad moments, funny times and sad times, even to this day. But for us right now, we remember Ted, the person he was before all of this happened, because he was a great husband, a great father, and that we really miss him. We miss and love the old Ted.
Samantha says, I love the podcast, and please thank the family for being so vulnerable and tell them that I am so sorry for their loss.
Like I've told you, Tiffany, before, we're not doing this for fame or glory or anything like that. We're out to enlighten people that narcissist is real, and the type of people that do this manipulation know exactly what they're doing. And when things start going very, very south is when we had this situation in our family, to where it went very south in a split second of a moment. So it's so important to look for those signs and see, and just hopefully that we've educated people enough that they can see, okay, maybe I need to step back. Maybe this friend isn't truly a friend, or maybe my spouse or my sister or my cousin, maybe I need to step back. Maybe there's more to this than what I'm even seeing. And they're making me feel this badly, and they shouldn't be. In my process, I lost who I was because I believed everything that these people were telling me. And that was my husband and what I thought was my best friend. I keep thinking about my children and how they were affected, because they were affected by all this too. My daughter wasn't affected as much, but there was things there. And, and tragically, my son, Ted and Brad were best friends. And to see that destroyed, it's heartbreaking. I never saw a son idolize his father like Brad did. And it's just heartbreaking because he'll never have that closure. There isn't a moment that when I talk to my children and my in-law children and my grandchildren, I before I end that conversation, I say I love you, because you don't know what's coming tomorrow or in the next moment, and I never say goodbye to them. I say goodnight, because we just don't know. I'm not ready to say goodbye to any of them. And I do that with my siblings too. It's just brought this family full circle and has shown us life is too short. Forgive, understand what true forgiveness is, and move on. I've learned that from my brother, that knew all about this, and my sister-in-law, to understand true forgiveness. I will never forget, but I have forgiven them, and I've moved on, because that's my brother, and that's my sister-in-law. They know what they did, and they know what they did was wrong, and they were victims in this mess too. And yes, they did know, and yes, they should have come forth, but put yourself in their place. I don't know what I would do either.
The last question is from me. What has it been like being on the podcast and having other people listen as well?
The podcast has been very, very difficult because you're reliving everything that has happened to us, and over again and again and again, because people will stop and ask you questions. What about this? What about that? And however, our goal was to be able to help at least one person. And we've gotten, I know of 3 responses, very positive responses already, and I can honestly tell you that has thrilled us to no end, because we feel that we've helped someone, and it's made it all the way worth it. And for me personally, learning what a psychopathic narcissist is and how they work and how they create their friendships and learn the ins and the outs of the person, it has been an eye-opener. As Brad has stated, this happened over 12 years. This just didn't happen in a short period of time and say, oh, what was wrong with you? Why couldn't you figure this out? It was so gradual. It took years for them to play this out. And Ted and Patty had a well-defined plan. It was like a Monopoly game for them. And then when Ted found out in later years who Patty really was, I truly believe he wanted out, but Patty wouldn't let him. I truly believe Ted wanted to be done with it, but I think he couldn't find a way out, because I think she had that over him, unfortunately, and that is very stereotype narcissistic. So for me, it's not even getting more educated what type of folks these are. I was reading one of the books that my counselor gave me, and it's 1 in 25 people are a narcissist, and that's scary. That's very scary. And it makes you open your eyes and okay, maybe be just a little bit more cautious who you trust and who you don't trust. But the podcast, I'm interested in listening to more and learning more, because I think you have touched an audience that really can be educated and learn what is out there. And there's a whole lot of evil out there. And I think you are educating people to help make them more leery, more cautious, and try to keep them safer. I think you are a gem. I mean, I give you all the credit in the world. It takes a special person to do what you're doing, and I'm so grateful that you've become part of our lives now.
Liz asked, has there been any repercussions for the O'Briens in any way from the community?
Well, we have zero contact with them and zero bridges between ourselves and their family. But I would say their reputation around the community has been knocked down considerably. Actually, considering that they even had a high reputation to begin with. I think I mentioned before that once this all came out and people knew that we went no contact with them, people started sharing with us their negative experiences and thoughts when it came to them. Patty loved to always put the image out there that she was really well liked by others. She had a huge amount of friends. Her neighbors were amazing. Her hairstylist was so good to her. I mean, nothing but boasting about how wonderful her life is and how she just gets along with everybody. After all this came to light, we heard from a lot of people in the community really negative ways that Patty portrayed herself to others that went noticed by them and wasn't favored by them. So in turn, I found out through a friend who knows a neighbor of hers that the whole neighborhood really didn't care for her, and they suspected that she was having an affair with Mr. Johnson for years. And it's oh, okay, well, these neighbors that you say you get along so well with and you're all so close, when really they weren't close. They were just that. They were just neighbors. And, her hairstylist that she always said her, the two of them were so close. Well, her and Victoria shared a hairstylist, and the hairstylist told Victoria, yeah, she would come in here and bash you all the time, and I never cared for it, but what could she do? Patty was a client of hers. So, actually, I think the day after Ted died, Patty was supposed to have a hair appointment and ended up canceling and never went back. This is a woman that she's went to for years and years and years. never went back to the hairstylist. So it's like, what does that tell you? She doesn't want to explain herself. She's hiding. And it's good she never went back, because apparently at this point she's not welcome back, even if she wanted to call and book an appointment. But it's just funny. She always had to put herself in such a high standard. So basically, I don't know. Long story short, yeah. No one really sees the O'Briens much anymore. They stay pretty hidden, which is very welcome to myself and others. And I think that they know their reputation was given the final blow once this all came out.
Liz also wants to know, are the O'Briens still friends with the Johnsons?
Oh, yeah. Which we totally expected that. From what Patty always told me, the Johnsons, she would say the Johnsons have no other friends, which is funny. That's what she told people about my in-laws, too. Patty would also do nothing but complain to me about Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, which she also did that with my in-laws. As far as Miss Johnson goes, she is a really sweet woman. I have never had any complaints about her. When Patty would get on her bandwagons about trying to demean Mrs. Johnson to me, I was never on board with it. I would always reply with, well, I can't say anything. She's always been nice to me. I've never had any problems. And Patty would get, beyond irritated that she couldn't get me to drink her Kool-Aid. Looking back, the complaints and way she talked about both Mr. and Mrs. Johnson mirrored the same complaints that she had about Victoria and Ted. Mr. Johnson always, and apparently still does, dote over Patty, just like Ted did. And Mr. Johnson treats his wife like crap, just like Ted did in the end. Meanwhile, Mrs. Johnson is a good-hearted, compassionate woman who's just sitting there and taking the abuse, just like Victoria did. So there's a pattern here. So when Kurt, which is Patty's husband, fully admitted to confronting Patty the day before Ted's suicide regarding the amount of text messages between not only her and Ted, but her and Mr. Johnson, what's that say? She doesn't need to be having a sexual affair with everybody for this stuff to be labeled as an affair or betraying a spouse, in my opinion.
Genevieve asked, has the Bishop family closed themselves off to strangers, or has all this made them more open?
I wouldn't say closed, but it's definitely made us more aware. We're way more picky about who's in our lives and who, where we're getting fed. Even for myself, after I cut off most contact with Patty, which was after this whole Facebook post, it was the spring of 2016, and she threw a fit about it, and it was, I don't know if you remember from a previous episode, but after that incident, and I finally told her I was done, that she was a controlling hypocrite, and I'm over her shit, basically. Even after that incident, where I had cut most contact with her, I became way more choosy about my friendships and my relationships. And my, new slogan with that is quality over quantity. We have a joke now that anybody who wants to be on our inner circle, we need to print up a questionnaire and interview people, because funny thing about loss is you find out really who your real friends and family are. And now Victoria is in such a better place. She's surrounded by positive, supportive friends. And they're all people that she really enjoys now, and she doesn't dread having to be around, and they enjoy her. So the people from Victoria's previous circle who have chosen to stick by Patty's side in this is a welcome goodbye. We're not missing them whatsoever, and we're glad they're gone.
Lulu wants to know, did you ever receive any of the texts from the cell phone company?
No. One mistake that we prematurely made was canceling Ted's phone. That way we could bring Victoria over on our plan. At the time, we just were not thinking. We were in a mode of, okay, here's a list that needs done, and now we need to get it done. So, especially that immediate week after his death, it was a total blur. I think all of us were in a fog. It's just something that you don't think about right away. That, and I think additionally, we needed a warrant to be able to get anything back. So it was another hoop to jump through. But really, we didn't need text to prove anything, since the last activity on his phone was voice calls. What I do have, however, are his external drives and things recovered from his laptop. When we found out all this and the fog kind of settled, I asked a huge favor of our IT guy at my place of employment, and he took a week and recovered deleted things from Ted's laptop and external drives that he made sure to delete before he did this. So we got emails, pictures, accounts that him and Patty were sharing, not bank accounts, but social media accounts that she allowed him to piggyback off of, which was really weird. Victoria had social media, so what's the point of getting on Patty's and not Victoria's? Well, the point of it was so, Patty could have him on her account and they could both keep tabs on what Victoria was sharing and what Brad and I were doing and what his sister was doing. So, yeah, we don't need the text messages.
Jill asks, have Patty's kids been in touch with their family since all this came to light?
No. Now, I did speak with Patty's daughter-in-law, and I don't know if you remember, her daughter-in-law, this is the one that's married to Patty's oldest son. So that's the one that Patty would always complain to people about, who had, kind of a rough bout there in his younger years, but amazing guy. And I had somewhat of a friendship with Patty's daughter-in-law for many years. So I spoke with her immediately after Ted's death, and she kind of offered up information about the kind of person Patty is with them, and it was not good. It seemed like Patty's relationship with her kids were very controlling and manipulative, and including the older kids. And I guess she, on many occasions in the past, there were situations that Patty's daughter-in-law and her son had to put Patty in her place when it came to her control issue. But since all this really came out to the community, none of us have spoken. We don't follow each other on social media anymore. A mutual friend did tell us that the O'Brien family decided to keep this quiet from their triplets until they were older. But, damn well the boys aren't stupid. I mean, plus they're not children anymore, they're adults. So who knows what they've been told. I don't even think we care at this point. But Brad has seen one or two of the triplets in passing, and they always smile and wave hi. And then actually just this past Thanksgiving, Brad saw Patty's oldest son, and in true form, he was super nice to Brad. They stood and talked for a few minutes about, the holiday, and totally avoided the elephant in the room, which seems weird, but it's not her kid's fault. Brad and Patty's son have always thought really highly of one another, and I'm glad it wasn't awkward for either of them, but, Brad definitely could have said, hey, your mom's the devil, right? But in reality, I think her son knows just the kind of person that she is.
Lacey and Phil both want to know, was there any type of investigation done to rule out murder versus suicide?
This is something that myself and a lot of our family kept going back on. I mean, right off the bat, they said it remained clear that it was a suicide. Looking at the other information that we found, looking back, the smashed cell phone, the deleted info from the laptop, an external drive, which someone wouldn't know the login info on or where he kept that kind of stuff. Actually, I just probably a month ago brought this up to Victoria again and said, are we sure? I mean, it is something that kind of haunts me, but even Victoria was like, no, it definitely was. She told me apparently Ted would sit in the same spot in that room on the floor and clean his guns in a certain way, with one leg position kind of over the other in a specific way. And it wasn't something that anybody aside from her would have known to position him in, because no one would have saw him the way he would sit in that room and do his thing, clean his guns, do whatever he was doing. And she said when she found him, he was sitting in that same spot that he had always sat in a million times. The O'Briens did have a key to Ted and Victoria's house even, and that's why I always thought, are we sure that, Patty or her husband didn't go in that house in a rage? I mean, you never know, which, P.S., they don't have a key anymore. The first thing we did whenever we came back into town after Ted's funeral was change all the locks and secure everything that they had access to. They don't have any access to any part of our lives anymore, but we did wonder, but it's definitely not a possibility at this point. So it definitely was a suicide.
Maddie asked, are people in their town aware of what has happened / the podcast, or is everything hush-hush?
As far as the situation, I think people in this town know either a Reader's Digest version of the story or a version of the story. As for the podcast, myself and Victoria only shared with close family and really close friends, some of which are local and others who are not. But I will say, I mean, I know a lot of people are into podcasts around our area, and I will say that the pod has seemed to spread a good bit around the community.
Hannah asked, what does the family plan on doing about, quote, the beast, end quote?
Well, first of all, I love Hannah because that has to be my new favorite nickname for her. So far, we just pretty much call her Diablo and Lord Baelish in our family, which if you don't watch Game of Thrones, then you won't know that Patty is the real-life version of Lord Baelish. But I like the Beast. So I actually, last week, I think it was, I did see Patty. I went into a local restaurant to get a pickup order, and she was sitting like in the back with somebody having dinner, and I actually didn't lose my mind, which was a Christmas miracle. I don't know. Weirdly, I was like, I don't even have time for her. I don't even want to look at her. I didn't even want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I felt anything other than, I don't know. It's weird. I was fine. I was just like, I just didn't have time for you, which 6 months ago may not have been the same story. I'm just at a place now where I'm so over her, and she means literally nothing to me. But as far as like, what do we all plan on doing about her? Absolutely nothing. I think that we've all just said, let karma, the universe, God, whoever, take care of it. I mean, honestly, I don't even think we need to lift a finger. With or without this podcast, she has completely sunk herself. People in her neighborhood, in the community, like, I think everybody looks at her as definitely a certain way now. Every move she made was noted by people who didn't even know what was going on behind the scenes for the funeral, for the viewing, the way she carried herself. And when all this came out, she just decided to hide like a cockroach after all this, which speaks volumes, because she always said to me that she never had a problem confronting anyone or calling people out that she thought were lying to her. Yet now she's choosing to stay silent. I feel like if I was accused of something like this, I'd be taking a freaking flamethrower to get the point across that I was innocent of things that I was accused of. Not everyone's like me, so I can't speak for her. I just find it funny that knowing her confrontational personality, well, I call it confrontational, but she would call it, quote unquote, speaking her truth. She would always say that. But yeah, she doesn't have anything to say at this point other than manipulating those closest to her and making them think she's the victim. So I just know we have a mountain of black and white proof in addition to the police report. And if people want to believe her, that's their own problems. If this story hasn't made anyone second guess who you're close to, then they're just as blind as we were before these life lessons. So we plan on doing nothing with her. The universe will take care of it.
And again, the last question is from me. I just would love to know, what has sharing your story on the podcast been like for you?
Well, I know for me, it's been, number one, it's been validating and healing. I mean, I keep saying if I had heard about this podcast 3 years ago, it would have made a light bulb go off inside my head, and maybe I'd have some insight to what was happening here. Just hearing the facts that you give on each episode of gaslighting, about gaslighting and this type of abuse, every time I hear it, I just shake my head every time, like nodding, like, yep, that sounds so familiar. It's almost like word for word what you say, and these facts were specifically written for what we were experiencing, and I never knew how to put it into words. You know, for the longest time, Brad and I thought we had a serious issue with ourselves, or as people and as children, always asking, well, why? What's going on? Why are we the black sheep? Which, side note, be the black sheep, people. Trust your gut. Turns out a problem I thought was just a mini side problem regarding someone who I thought was a hypocrite and not the best person or friend turned out to be one of the main problems and all this and a total abuser. I just couldn't put my finger on it, and I downplayed it for so long until I heard this podcast and was informed that these things have a name, and it's called narcissistic abuse. And unfortunately, I found out about it after my father-in-law was already gone. Really makes me sad. So I really hope this helps someone. As for Brad, he did this hoping to help at least one person. He has not listened to one episode of the podcast, and he probably won't, because like he says, he lives this every day, and he thinks about it all day, every day, and he doesn't need to relive it. But we all agreed we just wanted to help somebody. So, side note, I am on social media, and I've been reading all the really sweet and supportive comments, and you, Tiffany, have been so nice to send along messages or emails from listeners to us, and I cannot thank people enough. I knew putting this story out there would get a lot of judgment from others who might use this platform for entertainment and not so much learning, which is totally fine. I am guilty of that myself, because how weird is it that I listen to true crime podcasts? Family members of murder victims or crime victims, I'm sure, don't want podcasts to be listened to for entertainment. We're all guilty of it in one way or another. So I was fully prepared to receive judgment from people who don't understand the situation because they haven't lived it before. And that's just human nature. I totally understand. But the overwhelming support from people and their sweet comments and messages have completely outweighed anything else. And I wish I could hug every single one of these people in person. It's meant that much to me. And for Tiffany, the gift I got out of this podcast, aside from validation and healing, which you were a huge... you helped with that. The other thing I got was obtaining a friendship with a totally incredible, selfless, strong human being, and I can't ever thank you enough for everything you've done for us and making sure that we were comfortable doing it along the whole journey. I just love you more than I can say, and you're doing amazing things, and I'm so glad we had the opportunity.
I'm totally not crying right now.
Get it together as I cry.
The following questions were submitted for myself and the podcast. Jay Brock wants to know, what other podcasts do you like to listen to? Well, Jay Brock, sorry I did not get your real name. I listen to a lot of audiobooks these days, mostly for research purposes, getting ready for season 4 and future stories on the podcast. I made a list, and I went with my all-time favorite podcasts thus far. So it's kind of long, and I'll put it in the episode notes because it's so long if anybody else is interested. So some of my all-time favorite podcasts are Crime Junkie, Court Junkie, Criminal, The Dream, Someone Knows Something, Aftermath, Believed, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, Breakdown, Casefile, Broken Harts, Crimetown, Slow Burn, Dirty John, Dr. Death, Empire on Blood, In the Dark, S-Town, Serial, She Says, Crimetown Presents The Ballad of Billy Balls, The Daily, The Grift, The Dropout, The Vanished, Thin Air, Unconcluded, Uncover, Up First, Up and Vanished, and The Teacher's Pet. Liz asked, if Patty or part of her family were to approach you to share their side of the story, would you tell it? Honestly, I don't know. It would definitely be a conversation I would have with the Bishop family and sort of see what their feelings were before deciding something like that. I think it would also greatly depend on who was making the request and the nature of it and sort of the spirit of it. I couldn't give a definitive answer now. I will say a lot of verifying and things like that goes on behind the scenes that doesn't necessarily make it onto the podcast. I really work with the families and make sure that the survivors in the story are really comfortable with what's shared before it gets out to the public. I would always welcome a conversation privately with Patty or any of her family, but whether or not I would share it with everyone is a different story. Kendall asks, how did you guys meet and get connected? And Tony wanted to know, how do you find your stories? So CJ and I got connected during the first season via Instagram, and it organically developed from there. I feel like I kind of got to know her before we even talked about her sharing the story on the podcast. That's how I found her story. However, going forward, I look for stories through the submissions that we get on the website. So anyone who is interested in submitting their story, they can go to somethingwaswrong.com/submissions and they can fill out the form there. This helps me keep everything organized and everyone's contact information saved. And also this way people only have to submit their story one time. And I really appreciate everyone who's submitted their stories. Reading them is very difficult, but there is a lot of incredible people listening to this podcast, and it's an honor that people share what they share. Michelle asks, what is your backstory? I feel like we don't know a lot about you, except you're awesome. Well, thank you, Michelle. You are awesome. So in terms of my backstory, like family history, I know I've shared bits and pieces throughout the podcast, and anyone who's read my book and who will read my future book, I share a bit more in writing about kind of my story and my personal journey. My second book comes out May 2020, and it will include a lot more detail about my personal and professional journey. But since sharing more on the podcast, I've had people reach out and ask if I plan on sharing my own story or having my own season and things like that. And honestly, the truthful answer is I just don't know yet. I want to make sure I'm in a really good emotional place. And with grieving and everything right now, now is not the time to really get all up in that. And so far, I have found it easier in written form, but it's definitely something I plan to do. I'm just not sure about the exact details yet, but sort of like who I am today, my backstory kind of background. I am a mom of 3. I live in Northern California. I've been born and raised here my whole life, although I have moved around a ton. I have been married for 11 years now, and I got married really young. My husband is my absolute best friend, and we actually met when we were 16 playing a punk rock show together. I was in a band called PMS. Shout out to the PMS girls if any of them are listening. And and it stood for Pretty Misleading Stereotypes. So edgy. And my husband was in a band. We played a show together, and that's when we first met, but we didn't start dating until college age. But yeah, family story and my history there is a very long one, and I do hope to tell it one day, just not ready yet. I will say I grew up with 2 parents with personality disorders, as I've shared. Alcoholism and addiction ran rampant in my family, and as you can imagine, it created a lot of trauma, both emotional and physical abuse in my life, and I have also, outside of my family, experienced sexual abuse. And I truly believe that my story makes me who I am and helps me to be more empathetic and connect with other survivors in a deeper way, and so I am really grateful for that as well. Lori asked, what is your professional background that made you so good at creating and editing? Thank you so much for your kind words. That means a lot to me. In terms of podcasting, my husband and I had a podcast years and years ago. It was only a few episodes. It's not out anymore. You never know. Maybe it'll be a reboot one day, but it was called Love and Swearage. But like I said, it was a long time ago. And so I really didn't have a lot of podcasting experience coming into season 1, but I took a lot of time and did a lot of research, watched a lot of YouTube, Googled a lot of things. I've been interested in documentary storytelling my entire life, and I've been interested in true crime since I was a kid, and so that came naturally to me. The actual technical aspects of it have definitely been a learning and continue to be, but I've always been a storyteller. I've always been a creative person, and that's what really fuels me and fulfills me, and also working with people is something that's really important to me. I have worked in the beauty industry. I've worked in the fashion industry. I worked as a stylist most recently for a Fortune 500 fashion company in the Bay Area. And I got to do really cool, exciting stuff like style celebrities and do all sorts of amazing things. And it was a great opportunity. But I also realized that it wasn't my dream job that I thought it was. And I wanted to work towards doing something independently and work towards doing something like what I'm doing now, and I'm so glad that I made the decision to do so. Also, I was a, quote, professional blogger, end quote, and worked for other media companies such as BuzzFeed. I've done some videos for them, and that was awesome. I specialize in body positivity, and a lot of the emotional abuse that I went through as a kid involved body image. So it's been something that is really important to me and close to my heart. So that's a little bit about my professional background. Kelly and Sam ask, when will season 4 be out? And Ginny asked, what is season 4 about? I'm dying to know. Season 4 will be out sometime in January. Do not have the exact date for you yet, but if you want to stay up to date, definitely follow me on Instagram at LookieBoo. And season 4, all I'm going to say is that it involves cults and group psychology. Felicity wants to know, when you feel stuck/blocked, how do you answer, what's my motivation to keep going? I really enjoy this question. I would say that thankfully, knock on wood, as a writer, I don't experience writer's block too often. I write almost every single day and have been for probably the last 3 to 5 years of some kind, whether it be private or for work. And so that has really helped me to kind of just keep pushing. However, I find that I start to sort of slow down and become less productive when I am burnt out and I am not taking care of myself properly, or my depression or anxiety is heightening. So I really have to be cautious and make sure that I am taking care of myself, spending time with my family, spending time on my personal growth, making space away from the internet and social media and all the things that I need to do to care for my mental health. But in terms of my ultimate purpose, it's all about my kids and helping other people. Those are the things that drive me, my family, and hearing from other survivors and hearing that the work is validating and helping other people is incredibly inspiring, and it keeps me going all the time. Amanda asks, what did/do you do for a living before the podcast? So I touched on this a little bit. I worked as a stylist for many years leading up to the podcast. I also am a writer. So right now my focuses are the podcast and writing. Tony asked, how emotional was it to listen to this story? I was just mad the whole time. Like, how could she? Absolutely, Tony. I'm right there with you. I felt angry a lot of the time. I was grieving going through the footage and editing this season. It was difficult and very healing at the same time. This past summer, actually doing the interviews was even more emotional. Hearing the story for the first time, I cried a lot. Thankfully, I was on mute, so the bishops didn't have to listen to me crying, but absolutely so emotional. They did such an incredible job of really putting us in their shoes and articulating their emotions and their feelings. And with everything being so fresh and so new and so vivid in their minds, I think it really helped all of us to be able to put ourselves in their shoes and really empathize with how horrific of a situation this was. Okay, last question. Carol asked, what did Patty say to Ted about Brad that caused his dad, Ted, to ostracize him from his life? It seems at times that he had real anger and almost hate for his son. Does Brad know why specifically? I sent the questions to CJ and Victoria before recording so that they could be reflective and think about their answers ahead of time. And when I sent this one over, CJ had talked to Brad about it, and one of his comments was, that's a really good question. And it really showed me that there's still so many questions that they don't even have the answers to yet. So CJ reached out to Brad's aunt, aka Victoria's sister-in-law, and she has agreed to do an interview with me. next time.
You think you know me, you don't know me well at all.
Something Was Wrong is written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Tiffany Reese. Music on the show by the band Glad Rags. I'd like to thank the Bishop family for being so vulnerable and brave. If you want to hang out some more, you can add me on Instagram. I am at LookieBoo, LOOKIEBOO. We also have a hashtag, Something Was Wrong Pod. Also, if you are interested in any of the materials, sources, sponsors mentioned on the podcast, you can check them out under the episode and show notes. Thank you so much.
You know me, you don't know me well at all. Think you know me, you don't know me well. You think you know me, you don't know me well at all.
With Metro by T-Mobile, your hard-earned money goes further. This tax season, there's 0 fees to switch. Enjoy Metro's lowest price, just $25 a line for 4 lines. Plus, get 4 free Samsung Galaxy phones when you switch. Now that's the best deal in wireless. Metro by T-Mobile, empowering you to rule your day. All lines lose promo rate if any deactivates. No fees on select phones. Limit 1 per line with eligible port. Excludes sales tax. Limited time offer. Additional terms apply. See metrobytmobile.com.